Hi Pisces, and welcome to your weekly tarot reading. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are doing well. This reading is for any sun, moon, or rising Pisces. We will take a look at the cards. We will get a sense of the awareness or big ideas for the week, guidance, and possible outcomes. I'll also choose a couple of oracle cards for additional information. So let's just go ahead and get started with your reading. If you felt like you're not completely alone in your home lately, you're not imagining it. Maybe it's a sound you can't explain, a light flickering for no reason, a room that suddenly feels colder or warmer or just different than it did a few weeks ago. Maybe you've caught yourself glancing over your shoulder, not out of fear exactly, but out of this strange certainty that something is present. That's exactly why you clicked on this video. And before we go any further, I want you to know what you've been sensing is real, not dangerous, not threatening, but real. This isn't a horror story. I'm not here to scare you into believing something sinister is lurking in the shadows of your home. What I'm sensing is something gentler than that, and far more meaningful than most people expect when they hear the word spirit. So take a breath, settle in, and let's talk about exactly what's been happening in your space. You didn't click on this by accident. Some part of you has been waiting for permission to actually pay attention to what you've been feeling. Let's start with the energy itself, because the first thing I want to make clear is this: presence is not the same as danger. So many people hear the word spirit and immediately brace for something frightening. But energy that lingers in a home is more often than not connected to love, protection, or unfinished emotional business, not malice. What I'm picking up around your space feels calm, watchful, familiar, even in a way that's hard to explain with words. There's a sense that this presence isn't new. It hasn't just arrived. It's been with you or with your space for longer than you realize, quietly observing, quietly present, only now becoming noticeable because you've changed. Your awareness has shifted. You've become more open, more sensitive to subtle things, and that opening is exactly why you're starting to notice what's always been there. Have you been more emotional lately? More reflective? Maybe even more tired than usual, without an obvious reason? That heightened sensitivity isn't random. It's part of why this energy is becoming so noticeable to you right now. You've been carrying a quiet awareness of this for a while, haven't you? Even if you've never said it out loud. Let's talk about where in your home this energy tends to settle, because that detail matters more than people realize. Spiritual presence in a household often gravitates toward places associated with comfort, rest, and emotional vulnerability. Bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, the spaces where life actually happens. It's rarely about the structure of the house itself. It's about the emotional energy that's been poured into that space over time. Laughter, grief, prayer, late-night conversations, quiet moments of reflection, all of it leaves an imprint, and certain presences are drawn to spaces that hold that kind of emotional history. If you've noticed a particular room in your home that feels different, heavier, warmer, more alive somehow than the rest of the house, that's likely where this energy tends to settle. Pay attention to that room over the next few days, not with fear, but with curiosity. What does it feel like to simply sit there for a few minutes in silence? What is your intuition telling you about which part of your home feels different? I'd really love to know in the comments, because so many people watching this already have an exact room in mind. Now, here's where this reading takes a turn that might surprise you. When I tune deeper into this presence, what comes through isn't a stranger. It feels connected to you, to your family line, your personal history, or an emotional thread from your past that hasn't fully been resolved. This could be a loved one who has passed, someone whose energy still feels tied to your home because of how much love existed between you. It could also be a more symbolic presence, an emotional pattern from your past, a version of a relationship or situation that hasn't fully released its grip on your space. I want to be careful here, because I never want to make absolute claims about something as deeply personal as a specific person from your life. What I can say with confidence is this: the energy feels familiar, not foreign. It feels like something that belongs in your story, not something that has invaded it. If a specific person crossed your mind just now, don't dismiss that. Sit with it for a moment. But the next part of this message changes the entire tone of the reading. So stay with me here. This presence isn't here to frighten you. It's here because it has something it wants you to feel more than something it wants you to fear. Energy that lingers in a home, especially energy connected to love or family, often stays present because it senses unfinished emotional business, not necessarily anything dramatic, but something soft and human. Maybe there's a goodbye that never fully happened. Maybe there's a worry this presence still carries about you, even now. Maybe it simply wants you to know that you are not as alone in difficult moments as you sometimes feel. This is where so many people get the meaning of these experiences wrong. They assume spiritual presence equals warning, equals danger, equals something to fear. But the truth, energetically speaking, tends to be the opposite. The presence in your home right now feels protective, watchful, the kind of energy that lingers not because it wants to disturb your peace, but because it doesn't want to fully let go yet, and honestly, maybe you don't either. Have you been thinking about someone from your past more than usual lately? That's not a coincidence. Let's slow down and talk about what this actually feels like, because I think a lot of you have been experiencing this without fully naming it. Sometimes it shows up as a sudden shift in temperature in one part of a room. Sometimes it's a smell that appears out of nowhere and disappears just as quickly. Perfume, cooking, something specific and familiar. Sometimes it's much subtler than that. A feeling of being gently watched while you're doing something completely ordinary, like making coffee or getting ready for bed. None of these experiences are meant to be alarming. In fact, the gentleness of how this energy shows up is part of the message itself. If this presence wanted to disturb you, it would show up in disturbing ways. Instead, what's coming through is subtle, soft, almost respectful, like something trying very hard not to overwhelm you while still wanting to be acknowledged. That's an important distinction. Acknowledgement, not alarm. This energy isn't asking you to be afraid. It's asking you to notice. I want to address something directly, because I know a lot of you are quietly worried this means something negative is about to happen. It doesn't. I want to be very clear about that. Spiritual presence in a home is not a warning sign of disaster, and I would never want to leave you with that kind of fear after watching this. What's happening in your space is far closer to companionship than threat. Many cultures throughout history have held a similar understanding that the people we've loved, and even the emotional energy from meaningful past experiences, don't simply vanish the moment they're no longer physically present. They linger in the spaces that matter to them, in the people who carry their memory, in the quiet corners of a home where love once lived loudly. So if you felt nervous about this presence, I want you to try something different the next time you sense it. Instead of tensing up, try simply acknowledging it internally. A quiet thought like "I feel you" and "I'm okay" can shift the entire emotional tone of the experience. You don't need elaborate rituals or dramatic gestures. Often, the simplest acknowledgement is the most powerful one. Has this energy ever felt comforting to you, even in moments when it also felt a little unsettling? I think for a lot of you, The honest answer is yes, and that mix of comfort and unease is exactly what spiritual presence tends to feel like. Let's go deeper into the message itself now, because this is the part you've really been waiting for. When I sit with this energy and ask what it wants you to know, the word that keeps surfacing is patience. Not patience with the presence itself, but patience with something happening in your own life right now, a situation you've been wanting to rush, a decision you've been wanting to force, a timeline you've been trying to control more tightly than you probably should be. This presence seems to be gently reminding you that not everything needs to be solved immediately. There's a sense of someone or something watching your life unfold with far more calm than you're giving yourself credit for. While you've been spinning with urgency about a particular situation, this energy carries the steady message, slow down, it's going to be okay. Does that resonate with something specific happening in your life right now? A situation you've been trying to force forward faster than it wants to move? I have a feeling a lot of you just felt something shift while I said that. There's also a theme of protection coming through strongly, and I want to spend some real time here because this might be the most important part of the entire message. This presence isn't simply observing your home out of curiosity. There's a sense of active watchfulness, almost like a quiet guardian energy that pays closer attention during moments when you're stressed, overwhelmed, or going through something difficult. Have you noticed that the feeling of not being alone tends to intensify during harder periods of your life? That's not coincidence. That's this presence stepping closer during the moments you need steadiness the most. This is one of the most common patterns in spiritual experiences connected to home and family energy presence that becomes more noticeable specifically when we're struggling, almost like it knows exactly when we need reassurance the most. If you've gone through a particularly difficult stretch recently and you've noticed this presence becoming stronger or more obvious during that time, that's not a frightening coincidence. That's care. Now let's talk about something a little different, the emotional layer underneath all of this. Because spiritual experiences are rarely just about the presence itself. They're often mirrors for something happening inside us. The fact that you're sensitive enough to notice this energy at all says something meaningful about you. Not everyone is open enough, calm enough, or self-aware enough to pick up on these subtler layers of experience. The people who notice these things tend to be deeply intuitive, even if they've spent years dismissing that part of themselves as just imagination or overthinking. I want you to consider, just for a moment, that your sensitivity to this presence isn't a flaw or something to feel strange about. It's actually a sign of how attuned you are to the emotional and energetic layers of your life, layers that a lot of people walk past every single day without ever noticing. Have people ever told you that you're too sensitive or that you feel things too much? If so, I want you to hear this clearly, that sensitivity is not a weakness. It's the exact quality that's allowing you to experience this presence in your home in the first place. Let's bring in another layer now, because I keep sensing there's an emotional pattern connected to home itself that's relevant here, beyond just the presence we've been discussing. For a lot of you watching, your relationship with the idea of home has been complicated lately. Maybe you've been feeling unsettled in your living space, even if nothing has physically changed. Maybe you've been craving a deeper sense of safety or peace within your own walls without fully understanding why. This presence, in many ways, is connected to that exact craving. It's not separate from your search for peace, it's part of it. Sometimes, the spiritual experiences that show up in our homes are reflections of our own need to feel grounded, protected, and truly at home within ourselves, not just within four walls. If you've been feeling restless in your space lately, This presence may be appearing specifically to remind you that safety isn't only about your physical environment, it's about the emotional steadiness you carry with you everywhere you go. And honestly, this is where everything starts to make a little more sense, isn't it? Let's talk now about signs, because I think this is something a lot of you have already been noticing without quite connecting the dots. Beyond temperature shifts and unexplained feelings, spiritual presence often communicates through small, almost playful signals. A specific song playing at an unusually meaningful moment, a particular number appearing repeatedly, an object that seems to move slightly out of place, or a dream that feels far more vivid and emotionally significant than your usual dreams. None of these signs are meant to be dramatic. They're meant to be gentle nudges, little reminders that say, I'm here and I see you. Have you had a dream recently that felt unusually real, almost like a visit rather than an ordinary dream? A lot of people experience exactly that kind of dream when a presence connected to love or family is active around them. If that's happened to you, I want you to know that dream wasn't random. It was a form of communication, even if the details have already started to fade. I also want to gently address something many of you might be wondering, whether this presence wants something from you, in the sense of needing you to do something specific to release it or move it along. What I'm sensing is much simpler than that. This presence isn't asking for elaborate rituals or grand gestures. It's asking for acknowledgement. Sometimes energy lingers simply because it wants to be recognized, not because it's stuck or troubled. A quiet conversation, even just in your thoughts, can be incredibly meaningful. Something as simple as saying internally, I know you're here and I'm grateful, can shift the entire emotional tone of the experience and bring a sense of mutual peace. You don't need to feel pressured into doing anything elaborate. This isn't about performing a ritual correctly or fearing consequences if you don't. This is about emotional connection. Plain and simple, the same kind of connection you'd offer anyone you cared about, just expressed in a quieter, more intuitive way. As we move into the final part of this reading, the energy here feels noticeably warmer and clearer than anything we've touched on so far. There's a strong sense that this presence has been with you during some of your most meaningful moments, not just the difficult ones, but the joyful ones too. Celebrations, quiet mornings, ordinary days that felt special for reasons you couldn't quite explain. This presence has likely been there for more of your life than you realize, quietly woven into the background of your everyday experiences. This is why the message feels less like a warning and more like a gentle reminder of connection. You are loved, watched over, and accompanied in ways that go beyond what we can always see or explain. That doesn't mean every unexplained sound or feeling needs a dramatic spiritual explanation. Sometimes a creak is just a creak, and a cold draft is just a draft. But when something feels meaningfully different, when your intuition quietly tells you this isn't ordinary, that's usually worth paying attention to. I want to leave you with something steady to hold on to as this reading comes to a close. Whatever this presence is, a loved one, a guardian energy, or simply the emotional residue of meaningful moments lived within your walls, its message isn't meant to shock you in a frightening way. It's meant to remind you that you are not as alone as you sometimes feel, especially during the harder seasons of your life. The shock isn't fear, it's recognition. It's the realization that something gentle has been quietly present, quietly caring, for far longer than you knew. So the next time you feel that subtle shift in your home, a change in temperature, a flicker, a feeling of being lovingly observed, try not to brace against it. Try, instead, to simply notice it, acknowledge it, and let it remind you that connection doesn't always end the way we expect it to. You are safe, you are cared for, and you are far more spiritually attuned than you may have ever given yourself credit for. Before you go, I'd love to know, have you felt something like this in your own home? A presence, a shift, a feeling you couldn't quite explain? Which room does it feel strongest in for you? Drop it in the comments, because so many people watching this are about to recognize their own experience in what someone else shares. If this reading resonated with you, stay close, because there's more to uncover the next time we sit together like this. These energies tend to unfold in layers, and I have a feeling there's more this presence wants you to understand. Take a breath. You are not alone in your home, and you never have been. Before we fully close, I want to spend some more time on a few threads I haven't fully unpacked yet, because I think there's still more here meant specifically for you. Let's talk about time of day, because energy tends to have its own rhythm, and a lot of you have probably noticed this presence showing up more strongly during certain hours without realizing it follows a pattern. Many people report feeling this kind of presence most strongly in the early morning, just before fully waking, or late at night, in that quiet stretch when the rest of the house has gone still. There's a reason for that. Those are the hours when your own mind is naturally quieter, less distracted by noise, tasks, and conversation, which means your intuitive awareness is naturally more open. If you've noticed this feeling intensifying specifically around those hours, that's not your imagination working overtime because you're tired. It's actually the opposite. It's your mind being calm enough, for once, to actually notice what's been there all along during the louder hours of the day. Has there been a particular time of night or early morning when this feeling seems to show up the most for you? I'd love to know, because the pattern tends to be remarkably consistent for people experiencing this kind of presence. I also want to talk about something a little unexpected, the way pets often respond to this kind of energy, because so many of you have probably noticed this without connecting it to what we're discussing. Animals tend to be far more sensitive to subtle shifts in energy than people are. If you have a pet at home, think back, has there been a moment recently where your dog or cat stared intently at a seemingly empty corner of a room, or suddenly perked up and watched something you couldn't see? Has your pet ever walked toward a specific spot in your home and paused there almost cautiously before continuing on as if nothing happened? This is one of the most commonly reported signs connected to spiritual presence in a household. Pets don't carry the same skepticism or self-doubt that humans often do, so their reactions tend to be more immediate and less filtered. If your pet has shown any of these small, easy-to-miss behaviors recently, that's worth paying attention to, not as something alarming, but as a quiet confirmation of what you've already been sensing yourself. Let's go a little deeper into the emotional history of your home, because I think this layer matters more than people realize. Every home carries an emotional fingerprint shaped by the people who've lived there, the moments that unfolded within its walls, and the feelings that were present during those moments. Even if you've only lived in your current space for a short time, the emotional energy you personally bring into it, your routines, your private thoughts, the moments of joy or struggle you experience there begins shaping that fingerprint almost immediately. This matters because the presence you're sensing isn't necessarily separate from that emotional fingerprint. It may be intertwined with it. Spaces where people feel deeply, whether through love, longing, grief, or hope, tend to hold on to that emotional charge longer than spaces where life simply passes by unnoticed. If your home feels emotionally significant to you, even in ways you can't fully articulate, that emotional weight is likely part of why this presence feels so noticeable there. Has your home ever felt like it was holding on to something, not in a heavy or negative way, but almost like it remembers things? A lot of people sense exactly that, even if they've never put it into words before. There's another layer I want to bring in now because it ties directly into why this experience has been intensifying for you specifically during this particular period of your life. Spiritual sensitivity tends to increase during times of personal transition moments when we're growing, healing, reevaluating our priorities, or simply becoming more emotionally honest with ourselves. If you've been going through any kind of inner shift recently, even a quiet one that hasn't been obvious to people around you, that shift is very likely connected to why this presence feels stronger and more noticeable right now than it may have in the past. Think of your intuition like a radio signal. It's always there, always broadcasting in the background, but most of the time, daily noise drowns it out. Personal growth tends to quiet that noise. As you become more emotionally aware, more reflective, more attuned to your own inner world, the signal becomes easier to receive. That's exactly what's happening here. This presence likely hasn't gotten louder, you've simply gotten quieter, and in that quiet, you're finally able to hear what was always there. I want to address one more thing directly, because I know some of you are still holding a small amount of worry underneath the curiosity, and I don't want to leave that unaddressed. If at any point this presence ever feels heavy, draining, or genuinely distressing rather than gentle and watchful, trust that instinct completely and give yourself full permission to create distance in whatever way feels right for you, through prayer, intention setting, simply asking for peace and space out loud, or focusing on filling your home with calming routines, light, and comfort. Your emotional well-being always comes first, and you are never obligated to engage with any energy that doesn't feel aligned with your peace. But for the vast majority of you watching this, what you're describing doesn't sound distressing at all. It sounds gentle, watchful, familiar. The kind of presence that lingers not because it wants something from you, but because it simply hasn't fully let go of the connection it once had with you or with this space. As we move toward the true ending of this reading, I want to bring everything back to the emotional core of the message, because that's really what matters most here. This experience, however it's shown up for you through a feeling, a sound, a dream, a moment of stillness that felt different than usual, isn't meant to leave you afraid of your own home. It's meant to deepen your relationship with it, to remind you that the space you live in isn't just walls and furniture. It's a living record of everything you've felt within it, and sometimes of everyone who has cared about you along the way. You are allowed to feel comforted by this, even if part of you still finds it a little mysterious. Mystery and comfort aren't opposites. Sometimes the most meaningful experiences in life are the ones we can feel far more clearly than we can explain. So here is where we leave this energy: gentle, present, and rooted in care rather than fear. Whatever or whoever this presence connects to, its message is simple: you are seen, you are accompanied, and you are far less alone in your quiet moments than you've sometimes believed. Before you go, I'd love to know, have you felt something like this in your own home? A presence, a shift, a feeling you couldn't quite explain. Which room does it feel strongest in for you? Has your pet ever reacted to something you couldn't see? Drop it in the comments, because so many people watching this are about to recognize their own experience in what someone else shares. If this reading resonated with you, stay close, because there's more to uncover the next time we sit together like this. These energies tend to unfold in layers, and I have a feeling there's more this presence wants you to understand. Take a breath. You are not alone in your home, and you never have been. I'll see you in the next reading. One more thing before we truly close, because I keep feeling pulled to say a little more about how this presence might continue showing up for you in the days ahead and what that might mean as time goes on. Spiritual presence connected to home rarely announces itself all at once and then disappears. More often, it reveals itself in small, accumulating moments, a feeling here, a sign there, a dream a few weeks from now that suddenly connects back to something you felt today. If nothing dramatic happens in the next few days, please don't take that as a sign that what you've been sensing wasn't real. These experiences tend to unfold slowly, almost like a conversation that happens over time rather than in a single exchange. I'd encourage you, gently, to start paying a little more attention without forcing anything. You don't need to sit in meditation for hours or create elaborate rituals to summon more signs. Simply staying open, noticing small shifts, trusting your instincts when a room feels different, allowing yourself to feel rather than immediately explaining things away tends to be more than enough. Presence responds far more to openness than to effort. I also want to touch on something that often gets overlooked in conversations like this, the idea that spiritual presence in a home can shift and change over time, just like any relationship does. What you're sensing right now may not feel exactly the same a month from now or a year from now, and that's completely normal. Sometimes presence becomes quieter as whatever emotional thread connected it to your life finds its own sense of peace. Sometimes it becomes more noticeable during certain seasons of your life and fades into the background during others. This isn't something to worry about or try to control. It's simply the natural rhythm of these kinds of connections, present when needed, quiet when not, and always rooted in something far gentler than fear. If you've sensed this presence growing stronger and then softer in cycles, almost like tides, that's a very common pattern, and it doesn't mean anything has gone wrong. It simply means the relationship between you and this energy is alive and responsive rather than static. Finally, I want to leave you with a simple practice, not as a requirement, but as something gentle you can return to anytime this feeling becomes strong enough that you want to actively engage with it rather than just notice it. The next time you feel this presence clearly, whether through a temperature shift, a quiet sense of being accompanied, or simply an unmistakable feeling of someone is here, try sitting quietly for just a minute or two. Let your breathing slow down, and in your own mind, simply say something honest. It doesn't need to be elaborate or formal. Something as simple as, "I feel you," and "I'm grateful you're here," is more than enough. These moments of quiet acknowledgement tend to deepen the sense of peace on both sides of the connection, even if you never receive an obvious response. There's no wrong way to do this. There's no ritual you need to get exactly right. The intention behind it matters far more than the words themselves. So as we close this reading completely, I want you to carry this with you. The presence in your home is not something to fear. It's something to gently honor when you feel ready, and to simply notice when you don't. Either way, you are safe, you are cared for, and the quiet company you've been sensing has likely been a source of comfort far longer than you realized. Has this reading helped put words to something you've been feeling for a while now? Let me know in the comments, and feel free to share as much or as little as you're comfortable with. So many people in this community have had remarkably similar experiences, and reading each other's stories often brings a surprising amount of comfort and validation. Take a breath one more time. You are not alone in your home, and in many ways, you never have been. I want to add one last layer before we truly part ways today, because there's something about the emotional undertone of this entire experience that deserves a closer look. So much of what we've talked about today circles back to a single idea, that love, in its many forms, doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it lingers quietly in the background of our lives, showing up in subtle ways we almost overlook, because we're conditioned to expect dramatic, obvious signs. The flicker of a light, the sudden chill in a room, the unexplainable comfort you feel sitting in a particular chair, in a particular corner, at a particular hour. These aren't separate from the bigger emotional story of your life. They're woven into it. If you've been going through a season where you felt unseen, unheard, or simply tired of carrying things alone, I want you to consider that this presence may have intensified specifically because it sensed that need in you. Not because something is wrong, but because connection has a way of showing up exactly when we need a reminder that we matter to someone or something beyond ourselves. This is the part of the message I think is easiest to miss when we focus too much on the mystery of, is this real, or what does this mean? The deeper truth isn't really about proving anything. It's about allowing yourself to receive comfort in whatever form it arrives, without needing to fully explain or justify it first. I also want to gently mention that experiences like this often become clearer with reflection rather than analysis in the moment. You may find that journaling a few lines about what you've been sensing when it happens, how it feels, what was happening in your life around that time, helps reveal patterns you wouldn't otherwise notice. Many people who do this find that the presence tends to show up most strongly during periods of emotional significance, anniversaries, milestones, moments of decision, or simply nights when they felt particularly alone before falling asleep. This isn't something you need to do. It's simply an option if you find yourself wanting a deeper understanding of your own experience over time. There's no pressure here, only an invitation to stay curious about your own inner world. And with that, I want to close this reading the way we began it, with reassurance, not fear. What you've been sensing in your home is not something to dread. It's a quiet thread of connection, care, and presence that has likely been part of your life for longer than you've consciously recognized. You are deeply intuitive for noticing it at all, and that sensitivity is something to honor, not question. Wherever you are right now, however your home has been feeling to you lately, I hope this reading brought you a sense of peace rather than unease. You are accompanied, you are cared for, and the quiet presence you felt is, more than anything else, a gentle reminder that connection doesn't always end the way we expect it to. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this reading meant something to you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, and I hope you'll join me again soon for whatever comes through next. Take a breath. You are not alone in your home, and you never truly were. I'll see you in the next reading.